Joining me now is Julia Lowe Bouet-Said, is a travel expert. Julia, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning. You are probably the woman that many people who have got travel plans are desperate to talk to, as they're manically wondering what is going to affect their travel days. And of course, we've spoken about this before, that strike days, they have impact not just on the strike days, but on either sides of those days. Is that going to happen as well? Is that what we're going to see in airports?
I think, unfortunately, yes, as we've seen in some of the other cases that you've been talking about this morning. We saw this week with train strikes that the knock-on impact it has on putting the right trains back in at the right time and the right schedules the following days does cross over. I think with the airport, with the border force, it really is worth putting this into complete context. This is not every airport. Right. The airports that are affected are Heathrow, Gatwick, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Cardiff. So if you're travelling from any other airport, it's the normal busy Christmas, travelling public, you'll find that airports are busier. But actually what you're not going to find is problems based on the strikes at those airports. So every other airport isn't affected. Right. And it's also, if I can, worth remembering, this doesn't directly affect outbound travel.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you. So it's border force that are striking, right? It's not Absolutely. Kind of general airport staff. This is the border force, i.e. the people responsible that when you're coming into the country, you need to show your passport too.
Absolutely right. So when you leave the country here, I was in Rome, I've just got back last night. You don't show a passport here, to UK Border Force when we're going out. Absolutely, when you come back. The other thing remembering is vast majority of people now have the biometric passports, so you can use the e-gates.
Right.
So
when they work.
Yes, we travelled in yesterday. My husband's always never works, and
really?
It was him. So, but
you should have leave him at the airport.
I did think of that actually, but yes, the e-gates also will take the pressure off. So it's not all doom and gloom. It is a really challenging time, and everyone in the airports and airlines are working really hard to make sure passengers can return, can depart on time. Airports are busy, but actually it's not going to affect every single passenger.
Okay, and why are Border Force striking? Do we know? It's a dispute over pay?
As far as we understand, it's a dispute over pay, yes.
Okay. And like you said, you came in last night, husband got stopped, but we're all going to just say that's his fault. It's nothing to do with strike or anything like that. There is always someone at those gates who you're watching and just doesn't do it right, which, I've got a lot of sympathy for people, because there's some people who just don't understand how it works. But there are so many times you just have people behind in the queue going, you got to take it out now. Take your passport out is basically what happens. But apart from your husband not getting through the e-gates properly, what was the experience like coming in? I think you came in from Rome last night. Is that where you travelled from?
I did. So I've been away 4 days in Rome with the family. We flew into Stansted Airport, and it's worth saying when we flew out on Sunday, as you would expect this time of year, even the approach road into Stansted Airport was very busy, a lot more cars, clearly. So we'd left a bit earlier because we were expecting it to be a busy time. But the airport was absolutely fine, very seamless travelling through Stansted. Again, returning back from Rome last night, no issues whatsoever. The flights are busier, airports are busier. So I think just trying to plan ahead and thinking about, how much time do I need, even without disruptions, how much time should I leave the airport? And I think the other issue is if you're relying on a train, if you need a train to get yourself to the airport, that is really going to take some planning, because that arguably is actually the biggest impact that we are seeing for a lot of our customers wanting to depart and, get away. If you need to get on a train to get to an airport, you really are going to have to plan very carefully.
Right, okay. And of course, even with road disruptions over the last few weeks, when we saw disruptions with the snow, we were talking to people who'd missed flights because they were stuck on the M25 trying to get to an airport. Everything does feel, I don't know if you've experienced this, Julia, everything feels way more risky when trying to travel than it ever did, like, say, 3 years ago, right? So pre-COVID, everything didn't feel like the stakes were as high when you were travelling, but now it does. And of course, this is the first Christmas for a lot of people here in this country in which borders are completely open again, and it's kind of what some people are calling a COVID-free Christmas, which is not to say that COVID has disappeared or people don't have it. Of course they do. But in terms of the restrictions that have been placed over the last few years, people don't have them. So for a lot of people, this Christmas and travelling is the first time they're able to do it and to spend time with family who aren't in the same city or country as them. So it's quite important. And lots of people will be taking to airports.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, I think the Christmas period is always a very emotional time anyhow, coupled with the fact that this is the first time in 3 years that a lot of people, like you said, will be on planes, will be travelling, will be needing the train services. I have to say, if I look at the travel industry over the last few years, this is completely out of their control. It's worth remembering Border Force staff are employed by the Home Office, not by the travel industry. And the other thing we've had is really bad weather. We've had Arctic weather, which clearly affects flights. We cannot fly planes in a snowstorm. So there's a combination of so many different factors which is creating this. But I think your point about is travel more risky? I think what's happened is we're all more anxious as travellers. Yeah. But I think there are things that, and again, plus the emotion of wanting to get away and be with family and friends. And there are small things we can all do to help improve that. It's being very prepared, making sure you remember the rules of when we're travelling. When you're booking, think about where you book and how you book, because that can make all the difference. If you're booking, for example, through a travel agent, they will just make sure you've got everything in hand. They'll help to offer alternatives. When you've got a lot of people trying to get through to airlines at the same time, it can prove very, very frustrating because everyone is so busy. So the small things we can do, particularly planning before you get to the airport, and be prepared when you get to the e-gates, passport the right way around, stand in the right, like my husband, put your feet in the right places.
Look directly into the camera. For God's sakes, get on with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Julia, it's lovely talking to you. Thank you for all the tips and tricks. Definitely take them on board. It's been a pleasure having you on this morning.
Thank you.
BBC Radio London.